There we go. We are live, and welcome to May 11th, Monday at 2 p.m. this week for our weekly Calamity Jane Adventure Hour live stream. This is your host, Eric and James. As always, welcome everybody to the week. Hopefully, Sunday went great, and it is a portent of wonderful things to come for the rest of your week. But here we go, and we're back. And as you can see, James is already hard at work, continuing his work on Dr. Exposition. James, how's it going?
Going all right. Just kind of getting into the groove of things.
Cool.
Yeah, I where we left off last week. I mean, I pretty much blocked in her body,
Mm-hmm.
and again, I was using kind of just the blue to kind of see off this white background. But I'm going to kill this background here pretty soon because at this point, the sketch is no longer useful.
Mm-hmm.
So I can pretty much start shaping her in with just relying on the color and the shapes.
Mm-hmm.
Although I'll probably snap back to the sketch once in a while because I know there's some lines I wanted to kind of borrow and stuff. But for the most part, I think we're kind of getting down to the last little bit of it, at least for our intents and purposes.
So I want to drill in on the your sketching and how you use those. Obviously, the most obvious way that it's impacting the design of Dr. Exposition here is as a reference point, right? And you sort of create those shapes over top of those rough sketches, but it's not you're not like being draconian to it. I mean, if something makes more sense as you develop the character, you'll deviate from that sketch, correct?
Yep. I mean, this is our show, so I'll deviate all day as needed. I mean, the sketch is fully there just as sort of like a guide as to
Mm-hmm.
what we want for the character. So a lot of times I don't. Yeah, you can see like you're bringing up a great point. Like I'm not even following even close to the shoe here compared to what I had for a sketch, which was kind of smudgy anyway.
Yeah.
As long as we get the general idea, I'm happy. Um, and I always have this intent that if I'm not happy with it, I can always go back and rework it since we're in production, but we're not like animating and they're not like what I would consider, final picture type of stuff. So, I'm leaving a lot of room for interpretation for right now,
Mm-hmm.
just for us to kind of go back and forth as well. So, um, yeah, I mean, if there's a great example was from last week, I was trying to add a highlight, like as if reflected light was in her hair,
Mm-hmm.
and and your perception was it was a streak, as in she dyed her hair,
Mm-hmm.
So, and it wasn't in the sketch; it was just something I wanted to kind of do on the fly. But realizing it didn't work, we just moved on. There's no need to stick with it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so now that you are just about wrapped up with the basic shapes, and you get rid of the over, or rather the sketch that's underneath your shapes for the character, does that sketch just become archive, or does it continue to influence the work that you do on Doctor Exposition?
It'll just become archived at this point, and then
Mm-hmm.
from here on out, as she moves around and stuff and moves it within the episode, I mean that becomes our newest reference points for how she is, how she acts, how new drawings will be kind of illustrated in the future for her. But
Mm-hmm.
for her, like she's kind of like more of the delivery system for the episode. She's not going to be doing a lot of moving around. She'll be pretty much standing still and talking a lot. So there's not much action compared to Calamity Jane, where she needs to be tweaked or designed in such a way where I need to have her in like these really dynamic poses or something like that. It's just she's always going to be pretty much like this, standing straight up and down and chatting and talking and theorizing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I mean, she's a character that's going to be. I think verticalness is absolutely accurate for her. She even her scooter, which when you see the first time in Act 3, it's a standing scooter, right? She's not sitting on it, and I think that actually, for me, it actually goes a long way to informing who the character is, what her voice is, right? When I write it, because uh, it gives her, at least for me, if I can find the words to articulate it intelligently, it gives her a very formal, rigid air, right?
Yep.
Her lines being very vertical makes her feel solid, stable, unmoving, right? Whereas, if diagonal lines that are at skews and things of that nature imply motion and dynamism, because all of her shapes are very vertical, it implies that she is a very still character.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, all it is just pretty much her. It's all kind of going back down to her functionality as to what she's meant to do, which is just talk,
Mm-hmm.
say what she needs to say,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
help the local town folks with what they need to do to solve the problem, the current problem.
It's interesting, and I'm just thinking about this now. This wasn't something that like I planned, some grand genius plan, but I do a lot of improv. That's one of my big hobbies. And one of the things that you learn when you're just starting out is to not stand still, not to just plant on stage and speak, right? Because it's not as dynamic, it's not as interesting, it's not as dramatic or theatrical. But in this
Mm-hmm.
instance, it actually really makes strong sense for the purpose of the character to not draw a lot of attention to her. And it wasn't like a grand plan, but I'm wondering if at some level, some of that training kind of bled into my creative process when I was writing the character, or if it's just a natural aspect of what I need her to do.
Yeah, I mean, because her character, she's not meant to really detract from anybody else. She's only meant to do one thing, and everybody else is the star of the show.
Right.
But when she had moments, her own shots in the episode, I mean, obviously she fills a frame or something like that. But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it's really, in this first episode, she's talking with pretty much the entire town. So Mitchell at a certain point is talking to her, not necessarily sharing the screen time with her, but he's there. Clem is there. The mayor's there. Calamity's there. They're all meant to be the ones that stand out, that are in the midst of trying to tackle the problem
Mm-hmm.
that's on the way to Bridal Gorge. So
It's interesting, and I think that there's, that brings up a good point about how the art and the writing and basically holistically every aspect of a character kind of contributes to the overall feel of the character, not just in their cadence of speech or the types of words that they say, but also their posture, the way they hold themselves. And it's saying it feels so obvious, but you don't really internalize it until you go through exercises like this. It's really, I don't know, I just, in this moment right now, it's sort of this moment of self-realization of how valuable all of that exploration is.
yeah, I mean, it is no. I mean, I don't know. It gets to a point where you don't want to overexplore or keep going over the same map
Mm-hmm.
over and over again. You'll get kind of stale. So there's a point where you want to move on with your life, but I think it's healthy to kind of go over a few rounds of designing somebody before you kind of come to a conclusion or to a satisfying end to you know saying okay, good enough, and let's move on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But no, it's and I think that I actually think we've done a really good job of that. Just speaking aloud right now, in kind of embodying the nature of the characters. We've got Calamity, who of course we've spent a lot of time on, and one of the aspects of her is as a teenager she's still kind of coming to terms with being an adult. And I mean, I remember when I was growing up, you get through those growth spurts. You kind of you grow up in a summer, and practically it feels like. And I remember being awkward and tripping on everything, and just not really knowing where my arms and legs ended. And I think we really literally explore that with Calamity's Tale, which is it's an encumbrance to her. She trips over it, it gets in the way. And we explore that a little bit in the pilot episode, which you'll see when you see it, and then it'll be a theme that comes up semi regularly, I suspect, for her character, right?
Uh, I don't suspect, not to give it away, but you love using that tail.
I mean,
Um,
it's a fun character gimmick, and I think for me at least, I find it to be a strong kind of uh, metaphor. Maybe is too strong a word to use, but I'll use it anyway. A metaphor for the awkwardness of being a teenager.
Oh, I think it's yeah. I mean, I'll use it. I think it's a great substitute. I mean, it's a great metaphor for puberty and or growing up, and dealing with the awkward stuff that's happening. I think I don't know. It's one of the things I find most fun about Calamity is how she has to deal with changes. She has to, that are kind of thrust upon her, and she has no power to do anything with just yet. And then applying it to her different situations.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. And and then you have Mitchell, who is a character who I think has a lot of insecurities about himself. Right? He fancies himself a stand-up comedian, or at the very least a great entertainer. At the very least, a great entertainer, and yet he finds himself the owner of a saloon in a desert town on this sort of like backwards planet or world or wherever it is that Dry Gulp Gorge is, right? And the paper bag over his head, which kind of started as a gag, a reference to the Gong Show, has really turned into a symbol of his own insecurities, right? His unwillingness to reveal his own face. And I don't know, I just talking about it out loud, I'm not to toot our own horns too much, but I really like some of the things, the visual metaphors that we've come up with for our characters and how they've integrated with them.
Yeah, they're happy accidents. Yeah, I don't want to give us too much.
No. It's never a happy accident. It's always intentional, right? Remember, we got to double down and lean into us being geniuses.
Yeah, that's true.
There's a saying in improv: there are no mistakes, only offers. That's what we need to really be focusing on here. So I don't know. It's this. That wasn't something I was really planning on talking about when we started the stream today. We were just going to wrap up kind of your last phase on Dr. Exposition before we moved on to a new topic for next week. But I think it's a really valid, interesting point that that we talk about.
Yeah, it's and I'm even though we're going to have more purposeful accidents. I mean, I'm looking forward to
purposeful accidents.
I'm looking forward to the purposes that we're going to have on the next batch of characters we're going to be discussing in future streams. Okay, give me your thoughts on this. I originally had her with her hands behind her back, but I'm thinking like I could have her hands in pockets. I don't know if it's really worth it to have it this way or her hands behind her back. Thoughts?
Yeah, I do have thoughts actually, and I think her hands need to be behind her back, not in her pockets.
Okay.
In your hands in your pockets is a sign of insecurity. It's a defensive maneuver, similar to like crossing your arms in front of your chest, right? Mm-hmm. It's a almost like implied lack of confidence, and Dr. Exposition is not. She has the utmost confidence as long as she's talking about what she's talking about, right? Mm-hmm. Her hands behind her back is a posture of confidence and strength, right?
Mm-hmm. Knowledge of her almost holding back information as well, possibly.
Absolutely. Because her hands are behind her back, she leaves her front exposed, right? And that's a sign of confidence to have your front exposed like that. So I personally think that her hands need to be behind her back and not in her pockets. I think that sends the wrong message.
Well, there you go. We've just edited that on the fly. No more pockets. Hands behind the back.
I mean that's my 2 cents. Like I'm not, if you have a different feeling about it.
I agree. You sold me on that. So
okay.
Let's do it. I don't mind. It's just one less thing to worry about drawing her anyway. She's, with her, she's always going to be like on her scooter and or standing like this pretty much. So yeah, there's no need to really have extra lines for pockets. I don't mind that at all. So I'm always about simple as less is more, whatever you want to call it. Whatever phrase you want to throw it there.
Yeah. Well, I do have a follow-up question related. Gloves or no gloves? And
That's a good.
if gloves, yes, what color? Because they can't be
Uh,
black. Black, in my opinion, implies villainous intent. I don't know why, but black gloves imply villainous intent. But I also don't want to do white gloves because that implies sterility, and I don't know. That just doesn't make sense for her. So I would think that here's my thought would be a light blue, like almost a sky blue, if we were gonna go with gloves.
yeah, that's a. Let me get to that point. Let me get to that part in a second here. Let me finish this off. Not that this.
I love that you haven't removed the default games from the start menu on your laptop. That's a complete aside. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't be drawing attention to that. But that's literally the first thing I do when I buy a computer is immediately delete all the garbage that Microsoft puts on their computers
Yeah,
in
no, not me.
Windows 10.
I just original stuff. I'm all about that. Why not? And then when I get mad at losing space, then I go in and start wrecking things.
That's a good idea. Like you save it, right? You create a focal point for your rage.
Then it just kind of that distracts me, and then I'm good to go. Then just click around.
And then what happens when you run out though? When you finally get rid of all of the unwanted stuff, you have to
I feel a sense of satisfaction for me.
Yeah, yeah.
I did it.
I
With
know
all my Bejeweled and all that other stuff that's on there.
the first thing I do when I get a new computer, and hopefully I won't need to get a new one for quite a while, um, is just go through and uninstall all of the apps that Windows 10 puts on there, all of the apps that the manufacturer puts on there, and just I mean I don't know. I know I have a couple of friends who are really hardcore. They're programmers, so they take all their tech and computer stuff very, very seriously. And they buy a new computer and immediately format it. Like the first thing they do when they boot it up is format the computer, and then they do a clean installation of whatever operating system they want to use. And I'm not. I guess I'm not that hardcore, but I agree with you. I actually there's a small amount of pleasure like going through the uninstalled programs and uninstalling these unwanted apps one at a time.
Yeah. It's funny. Like, so I buy some of my computers off of eBay, and so they're used, and I will go in and reformat those.
Okay.
But this one I got from Best Buy. So I just left it alone. It's had the default stuff in here forever, and I just don't. Yeah, I don't really. For some reason, when I buy a store bought computer, I always leave it alone for a little bit, and then kind of when I get to a point where I'm getting that level of frustration meters going up, then I'll go through and try to do a complete wipe at that point. Sometimes I just go extreme and not even bother removing the games. I just completely start over.
You're a mystery wrapped in an enigma.
Yeah. All right, more opinion time.
Mm-hmm.
So in the original sketch here, see how I have this behind her and stuff like that? I don't know if I like this. I almost think that it's better if that was gone. I don't know. More simpler this way. But I mean, it does add a little bit of depth.
I like the depth, I'll be honest with you, but it's not something that's going to make or break the design.
Yeah. I'm going to have to think about this one for a little bit. Yeah, I'll have to revisit that, but let's consider that finished. That area finished for now. Let's talk about her hand, though. Let's get her hand out from over here. Let's just do. I will give her a normal, her normal hand. Without the gloves. I'm going to do a quick sketch. It's going to be ugly, but I don't care. I'm just going to get it out of the way. Let's see here. That's really ugly, but whatever. All right.
It looks like she's presenting something. And behind me, you'll see that I've discovered where these strange creatures are coming from.
Yeah, I mean, I could make her point. I could do this.
Oh, I was just doing a bit. Oh, that's good too, though. I mean, And again, this is another thing that's sort of organically coming from your work is like, what are her hand gestures? Is she a pointer? Does she use her whole hands when she speaks? I have heard that it's a sign of it. Take it for what it's worth, but it might be useful for us that people who tend to not move their hands a lot when
Mm-hmm.
they speak feel more in control of what they're saying, whereas
Mm-hmm.
people who do move their hands often, like I do, always it comes across as they're trying to get attention. They're afraid that they're not getting the attention that they need.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
yeah, and I don't know how true that is. I mean, that could be complete pseudoscience, but it was an interesting observation that I read or heard somewhere before, and yeah, I don't know, just a thought.
Or did you get that out of Psychology Today or something?
No, I know
Your monthly
no,
publication?
nothing quite so scholastic. It was from the DVD extras of the TV show Millennium. Do you remember that show?
Oh, I love that show.
Yeah, it was a great show. Chris Carter,
Frank Black,
Frank
right?
Black,
Frank
yeah,
Black.
Lance Henriksen, yeah.
Yeah, he was awesome. Love
Um,
that show.
so there was like a behind the scenes on the creation of the character of Frank Black, and this actually ties into what the topic of today's episode ended up being. But um, when they were writing the character and thinking about his persona holistically and his body language and who he is, they mentioned that statistic or fact or whatever it is, that intelligent people move their hands less. I'm exposing my own intelligence by moving my hands as much as I am, I guess. And so as a result, that informed the character. And so in scenes where he's explaining what he's seeing or he's coming to some conclusion or deduction, Lance Henriksen is intentionally very, very still in those scenes because
Mm-hmm.
he's speaking from a position of expertise and authority, and he is in control and confident in what he's saying. And so that's the first place I actually heard that kind of concept.
Hmm. Think about it. Like I'm just thinking along the lines of Chris Carter, who was the main creative force on Millennium and the X
And
Files.
the
You look
X
at
Files, yeah.
Mulder and Scully; they don't really emote much with their hands either.
No,
They're always,
yep,
yeah. So that kind of there is something to it for a character.
yeah, yeah.
Maybe you've seen that in improv too. Like if you want to imitate a character that's in control, you're not going to be using your hands much. I don't know. You'd know more about that
No,
doing it.
you're absolutely right. Yeah. One of my improv teachers, one of her favorite sayings was "Stillness is strength." Right?
Hmm.
You convey a very different message. So one of the big fundamental aspects of improv, beyond just the basic notion of yes and, which is this belief that everything is collaborative, and improv works when, rather than trying to stop the creation of your scene partner's world, you enhance it by going yes and this other thing that is also a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But another major concept of improv is this notion of status, right? A lot of conflict comes out of the status of two characters, and status can be communicated in the words that you use, but it can also be communicated by your posture and how you use your body, right? And so someone, like, you'll see great scenes where people will be, from a dialogue standpoint, basically at the same level, from a same status level, but one of the performers will be very still and in control, and another person will be manic and moving around the scene a
Yeah.
lot, and the person who is still has the high status in that scene. So I mean, there's a lot of truth to this.
With all that being, yeah. So I think with her, the less gestures, the better. But
Yeah,
this would be one. Like this is still ugly hand, but I mean, I'm just getting
sure.
here for topic. But yeah. I'm wondering.
Yeah, just throw blue on it. Let's just see.
Yeah,
And it doesn't have to be blue, but um,
just want to see it on a different backdrop.
mm-hmm.
And like roughly, this is going to be what the town palette's going to be look like. Something like that's a little too saturated, but
Yes, it's slightly a bit saturated, not dusty enough, a little bit too
yeah.
fall almost. Yeah, there you go.
All right. Okay, let's put her with a blue glove now. Actually, let me just grab it off of what I have here.
Oh yeah, maybe a gray glove too. Yeah, gray blue. Yeah. That definitely doesn't look right.
Yeah. I think we'll with her hands. I think we will keep her flesh toned.
Yeah, I think you're right. No, I think that answered the question completely.
So, but yeah, in a general sense, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, the only thing really left was to play down here a little bit with depth, but this was going to be this will pretty much be her.
Mm-hmm. Now I have
I
a
will.
question. So this is a standing pose. Now, again, this is revelation time. I haven't really thought about it before, but let's go to the game Majora's Mask for a reference point here. Okay,
Sure.
the Happy Mask Salesman. One of
Yeah.
the interesting aspects of him is when he changes his key pose frames, he doesn't
Yeah.
animate to those pose.
No,
There's a
he snaps
he
to the
snaps
pose.
to them, right? Exactly,
Yeah.
which lends a creepiness and otherworldliness to the character. Now, I'm not saying we do that exact thing for Doctor Exposition, but in the uh, words are failing me. In honoring her kind of stoic vertical poses, do we really see her walking around, or do we, whenever she needs to change position, we cut to Calamity or somebody else, and then when we cut back to her, she's now in a new position. And then when she's in that location, we can animate her as we need to, but we don't really show her walking very much.
I think with her being on that Segway, the thing that takes care of her mobility stuff quite a bit.
Right.
Um, I think we should pretty much just have her mobile like any other humanoid character in a
Okay.
show. I think that mask guy, he's such a unique. The mask salesman is such a unique kind of off kilter kind of character. I don't
Yeah.
think it lends itself to Doctor Exposition position as much, but
No, you're right, and I think that was an imperfect analogy. I guess I was just I'm trying to think of a better analogy. It's just, we don't like to avoid betraying her, sort of the visual metaphor of her being confident and still and this image of strength, um, keeping her relatively stationary, and then when we need her to change positions, handling it via cuts rather than animating her walking. I guess just
mhm.
as a literal explanation rather than a bad analogy.
Yeah, I'm of the belief that we can still animate, like, because she'll kind of bob a little bit, she'll move a little bit, she won't be completely static,
Mm-hmm.
um, but her movements will be really subtle.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Okay, that's good. But yeah, it's wow. It looks like you're really kind of wrapping up with her. Are you revisiting the bottom of the jacket again?
yeah, just playing with it a little bit. I'm
Mm-hmm.
still not happy with it, but other than that, though, everything else is good.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
she
just
looks
not.
great. She looks fantastic.
So yeah, so I think she's considered pretty much 95% wrapped up. This will be pretty much her throughout the episode, throughout future episodes. Yeah, uh, yeah, and that's the original sketch, and this is where she's at now. So
And I think the final version actually looks way better, honestly. I like the shape of her face more in the final version.
yeah, me too. I agree. So yeah, that kind of was something that evolved. One other area I don't like is her hair.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of tension right here visually with
Mm-hmm.
her neckline and her collar. So I mean, I have to raise it up a little
Mm-hmm.
bit, or go super longer.
Mm.
Well, let's see. So that was up. Still pretty tight. But for fun, let's just kind of do one more test while we're here. There's no rule for this, but if we were to do this, What do you think about her having long hair?
No, I much
You
prefer the
like
shorter
that?
hair. Much prefer
Yeah,
the shorter hair, yeah. What are your thoughts?
I agree.
Yeah.
I like her with the short hair too. But it's interesting to see her. I mean, it does change her. It does change her with the longer hair for sure.
Yeah,
But
the first word that came to mind when you lengthened her hair, whether this is right or not, is casual. She felt more casual to me with the longer hair.
mm-hmm.
And that's definitely not a word we want with Dr. Exposition.
Waiting that.
I actually liked it on the shorter side, even shorter than that.
So let's go back up a little bit.
I
The only
defer
thing
to
I
your ultimate judgment on it, but I think the key word for her haircut is professional, right? Business. But yeah, I mean, I think that that's really close, at least.
yeah. So this is where design takes. This is where all the time stuff comes into. Is you start playing around with stuff, zooming in and out.
Yep, yep,
But yeah, that's looking good. I'm
yeah.
happier.
Well, I mean, I think it's looking great, and we're at 30 minutes, so that was perfect timing.
Cool.
Um, and so I think we're gonna wrap it up there. Next week we'll be back with a different topic. We will figure that out at some point, and
Yes.
we will figure it out at least 5 minutes before we start streaming. At least 5 minutes, so don't worry.
Sounds like a
Um,
plan to me.
yeah. In the meantime, you can always check out more information about Calamity Jane, the Calamity Jane Adventure Hour on our Patreon site, patreon.com/Calamity Jane. We do a weekly post there on Thursdays that usually goes live at around 5 p.m. And then, of course, our weekly Monday streams, which you can find on YouTube. And then we post the link to that on Facebook shortly afterward, once we get all the technical hurdles taken care of. And other than that, that's pretty much all we have for the week. And I'm gonna say goodbye, James. I'm gonna throw it to you.
Yeah. Have a great week, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Take care.